sometime before December 26th. Take a look.
There was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs. So we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
Trump says the move was part of Washington's ongoing campaign against vessels carrying narcotics to the United States. The president said the site that was hit was along the shore, but didn't say which military branch or intelligence agencies were involved in the strike. He also did not confirm that it happened in Venezuela. U.S. Southern Command says 2 people were killed yesterday in the latest U.S. military attack on an alleged drug boat. Officials say the vessel was traveling along a known narco-trafficking route and was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. This was the 30th such strike since September. Critics of the strike, such as Senator Rand Paul, have described them as extrajudicial killings.
To discuss President Trump's latest actions towards Venezuela, joining us is Joshua Phillip, senior investigative reporter for the Epoch Times and host of Crossroads on Epoch TV. So, Josh, good to see you. As always, President Trump said yesterday that the U.S. hit an area in Venezuela where boats are loaded with drugs. And this marks the first known instance that the U.S. military has struck Venezuelan land. Can I ask you, is the Trump administration escalating its counter-narcotics operation?
Yeah, the Trump administration absolutely is escalating these counter-narcotics operations, which, again, it's designating them as anti-terrorist operations. So the Cartel of the Suns, working with Tren de Aragua, both gangs designated by the United States as international terrorist organizations, they're the ones running the show with this. And I would say not only does this probably represent the first of, I would say, many coming operations in Venezuela, this is also a shot over the bow to other surrounding countries. One of the big ones being Colombia. Colombia is trying to stir the pot right now, threatening Trump, talking about these things. Trump's telling them that we know the locations of every single one of their drug facilities. He's threatening to bomb those. He told Mexico, actually, even recently, that America knows the locations, even the home addresses, basically of all the leaders of the cartels. And so Trump, it looks like, is going to start running these operations to destroy cartels all throughout Latin America. And his previous statements when he was on the campaign trail was, any country that does not work with us on it, he will expose the connections of the government officials or the organizations, whatever it is, to the cartels, which is a big problem throughout most of the Latin American region.
Okay, so Josh, you're saying that this could lead to many more operations in Venezuela. What would be the impact of that? Would there be any concerns with it?
The only impact you're going to have is the media crying foul about it. And, politically, you have some pushback. But no, it's really nothing. Again, if you remember back during the war in Afghanistan or war in Iraq, America was doing strikes of this all the time on terrorist organizations. Barack Obama, former president, he was called, he used to use drones for just about everything. They called him the bomber-in-chief a few times. And so the same types of things, the double tap, quote unquote, operations, they strike a vehicle, guys get out, they strike them again, they crawl for their lives, they strike them again. We watched that over and over again in video footage of strikes like that, going back to the Bush and Obama administrations. The designation of the cartels, including the ones in Venezuela, and notably including most of the Venezuelan leadership, including Maduro himself, they are effectively under the same designation as any other terrorist organization. And I don't think this is going to be a ground war. I think you're going to be watching us just bomb them. You might have some special operations forces abductions or operations to take people out, but most of it's going to be drone bombings.
Okay, can you just expand on that point where you said the Maduro regime is involved in some capacity in the drug trafficking? How involved are we talking about here? Would you be able to talk specifics at all?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of this is being framed right now as a Trump policy. But if you go back to the Biden administration, they had the exact same policy. The Biden administration designated and had referred to Nicolas Maduro as the leader of the Cartel of the Suns. The Biden administration said that he was the unofficial leader of the country. He was an unofficial cartel leader, And the true government was the Venezuelan government in exile, which was recognized by the United States. In fact, towards the end of the Biden administration, they said that we would, maybe not do it, but there would be a regime change in Venezuela. Trump has just continued that same policy. This was a bipartisan, very much agreed upon policy. Nicolas Maduro is known to be the leader of the cartel of the Suns. He's worked with FARC, notably when he had his whole mass protests against him in 2018, 2019. He used FARC and other militia groups to kill protesters. That was when Trump, in his first term in office, was talking about military intervention in Venezuela. And when Russia sent 2 nuclear-capable bombers there and told America that if we intervened, that the consequences would be catastrophic. And Trump actually backed off. Russia's not coming to the rescue this time. Maduro, whether one way or another, and Trump's saying it now, he's on his way out. And again, basically, according to U.S. designation, he's the equivalent legally of Osama bin Laden. They could send troops down there, grab him, and dump him in the ocean if they wanted to, under legal grounds, with very little pushback aside from just criticism.
Okay, Josh. As well, you're an expert when it comes to China, so I want to ask you a China-related question. So Beijing recently voiced support for Venezuela. What role does China play in this situation? How dependent is Venezuela on China?
In my opinion, China and Russia are the 2 main pictures of Venezuela. And I would say actually what you're watching right now is not about oil, it's not about drugs, it's about the battle of who runs Latin America. So the United States has applied a policy going back to the early 1800s called the Monroe Doctrine. Basically, no new European colonies in the Americas. North America, Central America, South America. No European colonies involved. That went into the Cold War. That was the basis of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was the basis of us trying to keep the Russians out of Latin America. Maduro was Chavez, Hugo Chavez was the main one who changed that, working together with Fidel Castro. Hugo Chavez, the former leader of Venezuela, who handpicked Maduro as his successor, created various organizations throughout Latin America, which pushed out the United States. It was intergovernmental agreements to not engage with America, no military engagement, no business engagement, push America out, get rid of the Monroe Doctrine, and bring China in its stead. And what they did was the Chinese Communist Party, the Belt and Road Initiatives, a lot of the pilot programs were in Venezuela. They were the beachhead to bring Chinese influence into the entire Latin American region. As they ran other organizations and operations to facilitate, election organizations, cartel organizations, drug organizations, killing political rivals, getting their guys in place, and effectively conquering all of Latin America, not just through China, but just this kind of socialist, deeply communistic type of government, what they call the pink wave. That was a big part of it. And so China actually has basically replaced the United States in most of Latin America. And Venezuela is the linchpin with this. Venezuela is like the key piece with all of this. They pull that out, a lot of Chinese influence goes out the window. And I would say also it's no coincidence that what is the United States saying in its national defense strategy? They're saying we're going to bring back the Monroe Doctrine. That is the narrative right now.
Okay, Josh, just one final question here. If we're looking back to when this administration started, Special Presidential Envoy Rick Grinnell met with Venezuela's Maduro in January, and 6 Americans were freed during that visit. Is this conflict we're seeing now unavoidable, and what does the U.S. want ultimately for Venezuela?
The United States wants regime change for Venezuela. Part of the Monroe Doctrine is building up friendly nation states. The opposition government, the government in exile, is a U.S.-friendly government. When Maduro was ousted, they will put that in power. I guarantee it. The Venezuelan people already voted for it. Trump and even Biden have stated that their position is that Maduro stole the election. Neither Democrats nor Republicans recognized him as the winner of the election. So the government in exile was the real winner. You had mass protests in Venezuela. Maduro killed them, shooting people point blank, kicking down doors, dragging people out of their homes, put down the mass protests using FARC, a narco-terrorist organization, and using militias. And so the Venezuelan people would likely support that. But the other big thing, too, there was almost a broader war in Latin America. right before Trump and the U.S. started bombing these drug boats, just a couple months prior to it, Maduro was about to start a war with Guyana, working with Brazil. They passed into law saying they had the right to seize the parts of, again, just north of them in Guyana, where some of the largest oil reserves in the world were discovered. Had they done that, they had already moved their military to the border. They were holding live fire exercises. They already moved their navy right next to the oil platforms, including the Exxon ones, which were U.S. interest, of course. And they were going to invade the country. That war was likely stopped because of these bombings of the boats and the targeted attacks on the leadership of the Maduro regime.
Well, all right, Josh, I mean, what can I say? Insightful as always. And in fact, I learned a lot. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Hey, pleasure. Thank you.
Russia says it will toughen its stance in the peace talks after Ukraine allegedly tried to attack President Putin's residence on Sunday night.